Preseason's over. Roster cuts are already starting to get made. There was a big one that happened this morning already. Let's talk about that and more right after this. The conclusion of the preseason game against the Denver Broncos brings us to the end of the long preseason. It was an odd one. The first one under new head coach Kevin O'Connell. Not a lot of the starters played. I know a few of the defensive starters got some snaps in the first game. The starting offensive line got a few snaps in the first game. Outside of that, though, really none of the starters played. So we were left with a lot of the backups, seeing the growth of some of the younger guys on the roster. A big thing, though, as we kind of pre-alluded to here before we actually started the video, is that the defensive tackle standout T.Y. McGill was one of the surprise cuts as of this morning. I don't know. Unfortunately, I know he had I think he ended up spraining his ankle during the game, kicked him out of action pretty early. But with everything he did in the preseason, I thought for sure, I think a lot of other fans did as well, that he was a lock to make the 53, at least, obviously the rotational piece. I get it. There's a lot of talent on this roster and some surprising decisions need to be made, but he was out of all the guys we saw, he was one that stood out the most. So him getting cut to me was a little bit of a shocker. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, dude, I would say definitely shocker. I mean, how many sacks do you have? Do you have that on top? At least like
3.5.
3.5. What's interesting to me about that is obviously, his injury. He hasn't done really a ton up until this point, but he played so well in preseason that it's just you got to be somewhat surprised. But what I think I'm a little bit more surprised with is just how fast they did it. He's one of the first guys to get cut. They didn't try to make it. It was right away. It was like, oh, Ty McGill. You think someone like that would have at least lasted a little bit longer in their heads, like maybe a roster on the roster bubble, more that type of player, but it was more of like ankle injury, you're out of here. So I think I'm more surprised about that. But other than that, one of the thanks everybody for watching the GG Sport podcast of the Minnesota Vikings. I'm in Spain right now, so I actually missed the last game. It was at 3 a.m. So if I'm cutting out in and out of this or anything like that, it's because I'm in the country. But yeah, back to everything. Other than that, was there any other players that? Oh, I don't know if I said also hit subscribe. But any other players that you were impressed with in the preseason besides McGill? And do you have any other guys that you think could be surprise cuts?
Well, I was really impressed. I think that out of all, the most impressive guy to me was probably rookie running back Ty Chandler. Stats wise, outside of McGill, not a lot of people made any big, not a lot of stats exploded off the page. When you look at Ty Chandler, he didn't have amazing stats, but when you watch the way that he ran the football, what he did on that kick return, I think out of all the guys, he was the one I was most impressed with. Obviously Jordan Berry getting cut was shocking to me. That was a little bit of a surprise. Harrison Hand getting cut already was a surprise to me, but
that was another pretty early. But yeah. Wright's kick though.
Yeah. So cutting Jordan Berry, that one actually now makes a ton of sense because the punter built like a linebacker, Ryan Wright, booted that ball, and it was it's impressive, man. I think he's gonna end up being really good. Obviously, the holding concerns were whatever, because Greg Joseph nailed a 58-yarder with him.
Right.
So yeah,
right.
So that was impressive. Greg Joseph was impressive. As for surprising cuts, I guess what I think could be a surprising cut is I think both quarterbacks, Kellen Mond and Sean Mannion, could both end up getting cut. Maybe both end up being on the practice squad. Maybe one end up being on the practice squad. But I think for sure one of those guys, if not both of them, will be cut. I think it'd be more surprising if, I don't know. Would it be more surprising if both are? I could definitely see a scenario which they're both gone to keep Nick Mullins and Kirk on the roster.
Yeah, it's hard to say because I know you just brought Nick Mullins in. He just came in. He didn't get any preseason play or anything like that. So you don't really know what you have from him on the field. You have a good understanding from his other play in preseason and regular season games. But it seems like it'd be hard to just go get a guy and not see how he meshes with your team and then cut both your other quarterbacks. So I have a feeling, I think one's going to get cut for sure. And if I was going to guess, I'm going to have to say, it's hard to say. I want to say Mannion just because like he is what he is. There isn't that potential. I don't know. I think Kellen Mond is going to be kind of what he is. I don't see him being a great quarterback someday or anything like that. But the only thing with Mannion though is the whole, quarterback coach or the coach quarterback thing or whatever. So I guess that would be like the one reason I could see Mannion sticking around over Bond. But yeah, man, that's a crazy situation that kind of went through. I don't think it surprised a lot of people going into the preseason. Everybody was like, man, we might need a different quarterback. And, we all kind of hoped Mund would take that step. We watched that first game out of him, and, he showed a little bit at the end of the game or whatever. And we're all kind of like, all right, maybe he does have it. And the second game was obvious. Like, you can't do that. I think you tweeted out on our Twitter something about how, the perfect example of Kellen Mond is he throws just a perfect strike and then the next ball is just way over his head. And that's like the perfect thing about him his misses are just, that's the main thing about it. It's like, you can't get a miss like that. But yeah, I would say, and I agree with Ty Chandler. If I was to say the second, Ty Chandler and McGill, I would put them up against each other for the best in preseason because Chandler looked impressive. He looks like a guy that's going to be easily could be a future starter for sure. If not, right out the gate for if he was on another team. Obviously, there's quite a bit of people so in front of him in our team, but it'll be interesting to see how our running back room looks. After this 53 cut, I think we're going to keep all four, and I think we're keeping CJ Ham for sure. Stop all that. I don't want to hear any more CJ stuff. He's staying on the team. They're not getting rid of him. We're going back. We're going in the season with 4 running backs and a fullback. We got to. Chandler did that. He looks way too good. So I think the biggest thing it will come down to Mattison potentially getting traded or something like that. But it's also, I think, hard for us to even just try to do that. And I don't know what teams are really in the market for running backs right now. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. It will this 50. If I was gonna pick a surprising cut, actually, one thing was really good. One of my favorite parts of this preseason though was Ed Ingram's play. And he kind of had his ups and downs too. Obviously, he's a rookie, but it sounds like there's a good chance could take that first string right guard spot.
Right.
And that would be huge for us. And that was really exciting for us to see, especially because, we've talked about it many times that in order for us to win those trades between the Lions and Green Bay was on how Ingram will end up playing. And if he starts right out the gate, year one, that's a big step forward towards that, and definitely props to Kwesi on that. So
yeah, for sure. That was a good definitely a solid pick up there. So but yeah, I mean, obviously, like I kind of mentioned before, we don't know what the starting lineup's going to look like, just play wise, because we didn't get to see him. Kevin O'Connell said he thought that their scrimmages against, or the joint practices against the 49ers, as well as their 11 scrimmages they did in the last couple weeks of practice here, he thought that got them prepared well enough. That remains to be seen. I tend to believe him, because obviously when you're going against the 49ers, your starters are playing their starters, and that's they talked to Brian O'Neill during the game and kind of asked what those joint practices, and he said, me and Christian Darrisaw, Ben Lieber was talking to both of them. He said, those joint practices, we got to go against Nick Bosa, so we got to see what it's like to go against like one of the top edge rushers in the league. So we got plenty of practice there. And you look at just that, like this team just came off of they lost the NFC Championship game, so they're a good football team. A different quarterback, sure, but some may say a better quarterback by the time it's all said and done. So you're practicing against a team that was in the NFC Championship game. I think you're going to be okay. And basically, I mean, obviously they weren't full contact. Kirk said that in one of his press conferences at the end of practice last week. He said he wished he could have gotten hit a couple times just to get that feeling into him. Right. At the same time, it's not concerning. To some people, it is that they haven't played at all. I think they're going to be just fine. I think like I said, they had they played against some tough competition already anyway. So I think they're going to be perfectly fine. I'm looking forward to the regular season. Preseason, yeah, other than a couple of players, there's really not a ton to look at. I think the big thing people were really talking, and I mean, obviously you already kind of talked about this. The biggest thing coming into this, everyone said, is we'll get to see the growth of Kellen Mond, and he just didn't show enough of it. So Not a ton of answers were given in the preseason. A lot of questions, but not like, oh God, are we going to be any good? It's questions of like, what's this team going to look like when we finally get into playing in the regular season against Green Bay? And they still got another 2 weeks to prep for it. So I think they're going to figure it out. I think everything's going to be fine. And I'm ready for it, man. Preseason is just preseason. It's only 3 games, but it felt to drag on super long.
Because we didn't. Yeah, it's because a lot of it is because we didn't get to see the start. It is because we didn't get to see starters. We heard especially we heard the 49ers stuff. We heard Darius Smith destroying the offensive line and Justin Jefferson and saying we saw highlights, whatever. So it's like, come on, we just want to see them all on the field. I predicted it was a terrible, terrible prediction, but I predicted the last game that we'd see him out for the first drive or whatever. But it was mostly just because I just want to see him together in KOC's offense. I'm hoping part of it is like maybe KOC just has some tricks up his sleeves and he's really that worried about it, getting out and people being able to see what he's planning. So hopefully we come out on that game against Green Bay without them having any idea what we're going to play like and what KOC's offense is going to be ran like. That's what I'm hoping for because I want answers. I want to see these guys play a little bit. Just Justin. I just see one Kirk pass to Justin Jefferson. That's another great thing this preseason though is we're finding out that Kirk Cousins is slowly becoming a savage, and he wants to get hit in preseasons and he wants to say fuck and shit like that.
Right.
So I mean, hey, that's the kind of stuff us 50-50 on Kirk Cousins people want to see. So yeah, man.
Right.
We're going to now. It is the 53 cut and see if there's any more surprises. We already started with one that I would say is a surprise since he could arguably been the most impressive player in the preseason. But yeah,
I'm curious to see what they're going to do tight end wise as well, receiver wise. Another thing we should mention, the unfortunate injury to BC Johnson. He tore his other ACL this time around. So receiver, that opens up another spot there. Probably Jalen Naylor if they decide to keep.
That's my guess. Potential.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's unfortunate. I thought BC played really well outside of the first game. I was hoping to see him come back and make strides this year. Obviously, that's not quite going to happen, unfortunately. But a ton of other moves to be made. Interesting to see what they do with tight end. Interesting to see how many offensive linemen they keep. Cornerback, safeties will be interesting to see what they do. If they decide to go 4 safeties or 3, we'll see. Obviously, that happens tomorrow at 3 p.m. We won't be able to, with Jamie being in Spain, he's got pre-made plans already. We won't be able to do a breakdown of that right away. We might record one on Wednesday and get it out. We'll see kind of what schedules look like if we can make that work. But anyway, other than that, preseason's done finally. Moving on to the regular season. Let us know your guys' thoughts on the preseason, what you're looking for in the regular season down in the comments, and we'll see you guys next time.
Skol Vikes.